Halt! This is the tomb of the great Lord Gwyn. Tarnished it shall not be by the feet of men. If thou art a true disciple of the dark sun, cast aside thine ire. Hear the voice of mine self.
Throughout the course of time, mankind has always had this knack or this character about them of always trying to entertain rumors. There's something interesting about them, something tantalizing, whether they be due to negative emotions or even positive emotions in some cases. Rumors have always sparked some debate, have always sparked interest as to people talking about them and speculating. In this case though, in the past couple of days, past couple of weeks on this build up to E3, there's been a lot of information when it comes to tech and games and amongst other things as well. But in this particular case, we'll be just talking about Dark Souls 3.
We have long awaited you, Slayer of Demons. I am one of the Monumentals. We preserve the fabric of reality. There is something thou needest to know. Once, we too, a scourge of demons faced. Now it is your turn.
There's a rumor floating around in the dark spaces of the internet that there could potentially be a Dark Souls 3 that potentially will be revealed at E3 in the next coming, I believe, 10 days, if not less by the time you're hearing this. There's a potential reveal for Dark Souls 3. I guess this is okay. Personally, for me, Dark Souls 2 kind of left me with a bitter taste in my mouth as compared to the quality of previous games before it, but I digress, that's not really the point. Let's look at some of the information that we've been given so far as to the workings of Dark Souls 3, or at least some of the leaked information that we know so far. Dark Souls 3 apparently is going to be headed by Miyazaki. Miyazaki being the mastermind or the head behind Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, and of course had been working on other titles beforehand, but those are like the two most famous ones of recent times. Hello! Bear in mind that you have to take a rumor with a grain of salt. You have to look for the small consistencies and you have to investigate for yourself to see if this is true or not. I'm just the messenger here. I'm just telling people what's going on. Whether it's true or whether it becomes fake, well, at least we had a laugh and a good talk about it. The reasons why I think this could be so is, let's harken back to the days of Demon Souls. The only reason why Demon Souls never got a sequel, well, at least up until this date now, there is no sequel, there's no Demon Souls 2, was actually because of licensing problems. The main reason why Demon Souls actually even existed or was finally funded was through the help of Sony, a few Japanese companies and a few overseas companies which were intermediaries within the creation of this game. Without this, technically speaking, there would have been no funding for the game, hence why Sony had full rights, and kind of the logical and judicial laws with the game were kind of murky, hence why making a sequel was not possible, because after that Sony let From Software go as a partner, and From Software needed another publisher, and hence why they ended up partnering up with Namco Bandai. But since Sony technically owned the rights of Demon Souls, and these other intermediary companies also own some shares within the creation of the game, From Software couldn't make Demon Souls 2 unless they probably pitched this idea back to Sony and those same companies. But things kind of changed, and the spiritual successor came, and that was Dark Souls now. And things changed up. We had Namco Bandai doing the publishing at the helm of all the judicial stuff, and From Software making the game, Miyazaki at the helm. Everything was fine and dandy. Now with Dark Souls 2 though, things kind of changed within the workings of From Software. Miyazaki was removed as the head or the director of the game's development cast, in replacement with Yu Tanimura. No disrespects to him, but the style of direction of the creation of the game, you could clearly feel that there was something different about the themes and the way in which the game felt in comparison to previous games.
Please, Just stay away. No, please, don't come near me. Nothing good will come of it.
Now, if we can look at it from that point of view, then since it's Dark Souls 3, there isn't really any licensing problems, because Namco Bandai has always been willing to work with From Software, and I'm sure this is a license that they too enjoy making and being a part of, so why not have the sequel?
Hear my voice. If thou shalt swear by the covenant to become a shadow of Father Gwyn and Sister Guinevere, a blade that shall hunt the foes of our lords, then I shalt protect thee.
If you want, I guess, to adventure for yourself or research this for yourself, there are multiple articles. Check out TheKnow. Just Google TheKnow and you should see a lot of information about it. There are a lot of leaked screenshots actually, and some concept arts and some images here and there about the game. No video or GIFs yet, if it does even exist, so you could get a firm grasp as to what could be potentially going on with the game. I'm personally interested because why not? Why not have another game? People could argue that it could be a lie. Miyazaki was removed as the director of Dark Souls 2, so like, wow, how can he be in charge now? Well, if you haven't been caught up with the recent workings of From Software, Miyazaki is now actually the president of the company. So being the president of the company, he could potentially do whatever the hell he wants to do in terms of games design, in terms of creating a new IP, or just furthering other games that From Software has made throughout the years.
Hello!
So as president, he could just potentially just pass a rule and just be like, yo, let's phone up Namco and let's try this again. You never know, there could be more money to be made. You have to consider that Dark Souls 1, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, it's been a span of many years now, and this has accrued a lot of fan base, a lot of marketing, and a lot of information about the games, whether it be negative or positive. People now know that these games exist and they've become rather popular, so why not ride the wave if it could potentially bring a company more profit, and it could bring your fan base closer and closer to the hearts of the developers by giving them more of what they want. Anything is possible. There are a few details about the game that have been stated. Potentially as it is, apparently the game could be, I'm putting big quotations on this, could be being released in 2016 for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Apparently there's also a PC listing, but apparently this is negotiable. There's the word negotiable next to it. I don't know what that means. I guess they're still thinking as to whether PC is worth any of their time. Multiplayer component will still stand. Apparently it says 1 to 4 players. There'll be 10 playable classes, all available from the beginning of the game. This is typical Dark Souls, typical Demon Souls, typical Souls-born fashion of choosing a class and potentially having stats for different classes to make them different. Maybe not, who knows, we'd have to see. Apparently there are 45 new enemies and 50 new bosses. And this is excluding anything you've seen from previous games, so this could mean that there could be some bosses and enemy types from previous games, and then there'll be 45 new ones added on top of that and 50 new bosses. Characters and monsters from previous games are not included in that count. Apparently there are 100 new weapons and 40 new armor sets returning, with old equipment as well not being counted in that number as well. Apparently there'll be 60 minutes worth of cutscenes, mostly in in-game rendering engine this time, similar to what was happening in Bloodborne. If you harken back to the days of Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 1, maybe even Demon Souls, most of the cutscenes were actually pre-rendered, which gave about this whole cinematic and this theme of being in a cinema, I guess. And I don't know, it kind of detracted you from the game, but that's why there were so few cutscenes, because they didn't want to break immersion with the player and with you finding more lore within the game.
You should know that you will be imprisoned in the Nexus forever, just like the poor candle maiden. A soul is the essence with which living things comprehend the world around them. When one loses the soul, one loses the mind, and a land barren of souls is absorbed by fog and banished to the infinite darkness. The Old One is a bottomless pit of nothingness, with an insatiable appetite for the souls collected by its faithful demons. The Old One's very nature cannot be fathomed by the living. We neutralized the Old One and banned the soul arts. Then we spread the archstones, and in order to mend reality, monumentals we became. However, man's memory of history is o'ershort, and before long he repeated his mistakes.
Now with Bloodborne, what had happened was that they started making more cutscenes but with in-game engine, which kind of didn't detract you from the game, but it gave you this chance to sit back and watch things unfold as if you still have that cinematic feel without having to use pre-rendered cutscenes. I feel that that was a good step forward. But 60 minutes of worth of cutscenes to me is too little, considering the game is going to be potentially long if it follows the formulas of previous games. We're talking about 30+ hour games, depending on how fast you can finish them. If you're a speedrunner, that time is even less. There'll be 12 new areas in the game, and apparently when it comes to player interactions online, things have changed. Now, instead of using the classic old school soapstones to write each other messages and to summon each other, like write down your sign so that I can summon you, I write down my sign so that you can summon me for a jewel, etc., or using cracked red-eye orbs and other orbs to invade each other's worlds to punish or kill and murder each other. Apparently now they're going to be using a system called sacrifice ceremonies. So the old consumables are potentially out the window. What happens now is that you drag certain bodies. These bodies are not specified whether they are actual enemies that you can kill and use their corpses, or you'll already find certain dead corpses in certain locations that you can use to sacrifice in different rituals, which will allow players to, for example, be summoned to visit another player's game, or maybe for a jewel. It's currently unclear. You could potentially even make a sacrifice ceremony to create a bonfire and things like that. This is what all the speculation has been made out to be. It's quite interesting. They're playing with different light sources and enemy layouts are being changed. That could potentially mean that we might, if the game is even true, we could be going back to old school locations from Dark Souls 1, and it would be interesting, for example, to see Firelink Shrine in the night time or Firelink Shrine in the sunset, but instead of having the bonfire there, there's now new enemies that have invaded that area, for example, after the happenings of Dark Souls 1 or whatever. It kind of gives you this sense of, now if this is true, we don't know what period of time Dark Souls 3 would fit in, because Dark Souls 2, for me personally, Dark Souls 2 was kind of this what happened in the future but in a parallel universe kind of feeling to me. That's what I derived from it, but who knows when this could be or when it could be set. Boss battles, apparently there's a new system for boss battles called the heat up factor. They haven't specified, well, nothing is specified about it as to what exactly happens, but apparently in quotes completely changes how the boss fight will be fought or perceived. This could mean a number of things. I could speculate for years, but it could, if we could use a real life example that's already happened, you could look at it as setting your own personal challenge run on yourself, or you could look at it as black and white world tendencies from Demon Souls, whereby doing certain things you could either go to pure black, which could potentially make the world harder, more different variety of harder special enemies will appear during this world tendency, but since the world is harder, it's more rewarding.
Yes, very good. But he will be formidable. Be cautious.
So you could go to white world tendencies by doing good things, by eliminating bosses and clearing threats, which makes the enemies somewhat not as difficult, well, not as difficult as black world tendencies, but then their secret paths, maybe a new NPC will come to a place that's now safe, etc. So this could apply to the boss fight itself to change up how the boss battle actually occurs, which could be cool. I guess it's a way for multiple playthroughs of the game to feel more different, some more replay value, not too sure. And the last thing, personally, that I saved for myself and for you guys, which I really would hope is actually real, and I think is actually, and I hope that it will be actually done in a correct way. And they're introducing a new concept to the game called sword fighting arts. There's no other way I could explain this to you unless I use a different example. If you don't know of a game called Muramasa Rebirth, I would advise you to search for it now on the internet, and so that you can have a base understanding of what I could be talking about.
Known as the Muse. They say that she is the last firekeeper. But they say a lot of things.
In Muramasa Rebirth, you had your character, and your character could buy different sword arts from either using different blades had different sword arts. And so, for example, you're fighting someone and then you unleash your thunder blade, which had a sword art which could strike lightning, and then you could unleash your uppercut blade, which allowed you to do a vertical slice. These were separate move sets or separate special abilities. You could think of them as specials in fighting games, for example. These were special abilities that were not tied to your normal move set, but could add variety to the moves you could do.
Yes, very good.
Another way you could look at it is they could just be adding more variety to special moves on weapons, similar to what happened in Dark Souls 1 with the Drake Sword and the Dragon Bone Smasher and stuff like that, where it's just a normal weapon, but if you hold it in a certain way or if you do a certain thing, it unleashes a special attack which is not magic, which doesn't require a catalyst or anything required to do miracles or whatever. It's not attached to that. It's a weapon's own special move which detracts from its durability. Similar to what happens with the Moonlight Greatsword, with the Getsuga Tensho and stuff like that. So if they do it like that, if they do it like Muramasa Rebirth, personally I feel it's good. With the different weapons, with the new weapons and the new armors and the 10 classes, it could go for more build variety, and you get to see different builds with different weapons. And now people who like melee weapons and aren't into magic or ranged combat can still have special moves that they can utilize to make their build more fun and more flashy and more variable, you know what I mean? One person's strength build might not be the same as another person's strength build, and they might even be using the same weapons and armor, but maybe one guy uses a certain set of sword fighting arts which are different in comparison to the other person's sword fighting arts. Fantastic stuff. I hope it's real. I guess we'll have to see what happens at E3 if it's actually a thing. Thanks for listening. I know there was no visual content, somewhat. I didn't post up the screens just in case someone gets angry. And I will see you whenever.
Halt! This is the tomb of the great Lord Gwyn. Tarnished it shall not be by the feet of men. If thou art a true disciple of the dark sun, cast aside thine ire. Hear the voice of mine self.